Hi for everyone, I'm Ghaleon from Romania, and today we are going to have sort of normal session. I usually play with sit and go games on the micro gaming. So I have six max and 9 max games here, mostly 6 max. Turbo and Super Turbo. On the upper right we have pub game on the bubble already. I have in here they bet so small that I'm just going to be racing, so draw heavy board as well, and I do have strong top pair. Had some problems to start tables, but seems like now they are starting pretty nicely. Shoving here. Well, he can have semi-bluffs and some wars king X for example, or total air. Basically no need to be bluffing here with the E high. And if stream is working as it should, please comment on the chat. Well, 8 is kind of bad, but with the how short the stack is, I'm just going to be bet calling with the aces, of course. And deuce is pretty nice, that if he did have some two pairs, like jack 9 or something, I'm currently beating it. And I was sitting out in one table. Well, had kind of tricky start, because I had already started quite a few games, and then Arnimetsa said that I thought that Arnimetsa will end his stream around 29, and then I had to comment already on the stream. But hopefully we can get this running better now. No point to continue with weak middle pair here. Hello, Kauris. I have 1 minute delay, so if you are commenting on some hand, please comment. I could actually bet here with a high for value and protection, basically. There's a decent chance my hand is best one because both villains are checking here and the board pairs as well. And I do have the Twitch chat open this time from the start, so trying to follow that one as well. Well, not the greatest spot in a way that if he has a high, he's usually going to be calling. Well, check raising is kind of surprising. Of course, he might have flush draw 10x, some air perhaps as well. In a way, it's a decent spot to be c-betting when we have such a weak king. But for example, if I had like king jack, I would be really often just checking it because better hands won't be folding and so on. Board is of course ugly, but this guy keeps betting 50. So occasionally I can beat something. Of course, the bad part is that I do also block straight draws. Probably quite close. Quite close if we want to be. Calling the river or not. And in here I'm just going to be shoving here. He can have some full house combinations, but basically when I shove he can sometimes call with some sort of bluff catcher, for example weak ace. But if I check, he will be checking back toes most of the time. Of course, he might turn some weak made hand into bluff if I do check with the flush. These table sizes are a bit off now. Had some when I updated stack and tile, it didn't work anymore and had to redo the settings for the micro gaming. Pretty nice flop on the bottom right. And going to defend with 9-8 against min raise. With this strong of draw, I'm just going to be raising a semi bluff. And when he does like bet he's that small on draw heavy board, I would assume that most of the time he doesn't really have doesn't really have that great hand. Of course, recreational players can sometimes do some weird stuff and actually have a pretty great hand. With the king jack, I had two overs, got shot, and really great price on the turn. So probably have a bit too many tables currently overall. This guy doesn't really fold to 3-bets that much, so I think I prefer to 3-bet small and try to isolate him into heads up pot, because if I just flat, it's going to offer a really great price for blinds to come along. This guy mean 3-bets, I'm just going to value shove. It bit better flush draw, I would have double barreled here, but this guy doesn't really like folding that much. But I think like decently dry a high flop is still going to be pretty standard to be c-betting in first place. And this guy has been limp folding huge amounts, so I'm just going to raise him relatively wide. And in here, definitely going to be 3-betting. Kind of a problematic sometimes in here to get games running, because I had like tried to start it games and I had like one table for like 7 minutes or almost 10 minutes, so probably registered into a bit too many of those in the end. And here villain checks again. Could again bet for thin value. And in here I'm just going to be shoving the ace king. If he has better, then that will shock, but I think he can have like weaker AX and even some weaker stuff to call with. And he does check. I can't really check call here, so I'm just going to be stepping. And kind of interesting, because the flush draw completes, he rarely has the flush. Problem is that if he has king, he's probably not folding, but if he doesn't have the king, I think this should go through pretty often. Kind of interesting that he doesn't see bet. or bet flop with 10x, which I would have assumed to happen. And good evening for Eki on the Twitch chat. Here I could just flat with the ace queen, but for blind versus blind it's still pretty great hand to 3-bet as well. Okay, Arnie got his database hopefully in better shape. One thing to always remember if playing a micro gaming is to empty that database after your session ends, so you will remember it best, because if you don't empty it, there will be situations that it starts to import the old hands again from the database that microgaming is creating for its hands, and that will end up in wasting time on the start of session, and you might not, and you are not going to get the hard working before it's done, that importing stuff. I'm going to be c-betting the pocket deuces. I can sometimes get value from a high type of hands, for example, but main part to c-bet here is to protect my hand, not give the opponent king 10 suited. Well, early position open and 3-bet. They are asking how was my midsummer. Well, pretty much some visiting and some barbecue stuff. And when calling with the ace-2 suited and you hit this sort of spot, you want to be pretty careful. Of course, when he min bets, I can't be folding, but and pretty much no value in betting, hoping to hand go check down. And we'll lend us c-bet here. I'm going to call once. I think if he double barrels, I should probably just believe him. There's not that many draws he can be semi-bluffing, and he did c-bet in 3-way pot. And I would assume he's not going to be really betting weaker stuff for value either. pocket kings. Well, let's just shove. Big blind didn't look like really fizzy type player either. Basically, if I'm in race with that sort of stack, it's just that for decent players, it quite easily looks really strong. But then again, if you have really fizzy players behind overall, it might be reasonable. To min raise and induce, especially if you have people who want to be flatting, because with hand like pocket kings you are not going to be that often. He seems quite call happy guy, so I could try to see bet that one, because if they are flatting huge amount of hands, they can't have that often much on that flop. And with ace king, I'm going to be calling the flop. But when he continues and I don't improve, I think folding is most reasonable option. Ace 8 guy hasn't been 3-betting. Let's just fold, even though it does feel kind of weak being in blind versus blind spot, but I just doubt that that sort of player is not going to be 3-betting that wide. This might be trap, but he has only 8 BP. But it's pretty close, I think, in the pocket sixes hand. If he had like 10 PP, I would probably just fold. Let's try to get some value from A highs mainly. He probably never checks really with better hands here. Well, this month I haven't been. Danita's asking about table amounts. I haven't been playing this month much, but when I was grinding a bit more on previous month, I think I played something like 100 bit over on average. And with the queen 8, I have to call against that small shove. This is the sort of spot where I can, at least if PP happens to be in his senses, I can pretty nicely shove huge amount of hands. This guy is kind of call happy, so and there, even though there is straight with 4x, it should be really unlikely for either of us to really have that one. So of course, problem against good player in that sort of sizing tends to be that he quite easily can assume that my range is going to be pretty value heavy. So in a way, shoving might be better option. With the ace 3, I'm just going to be shoving. He has been 3-betting pretty often, so let's move more into limping style. And ace 8 here, pretty reggy looking guy, should be shoving really wide that spot. So even if we check from his statistics that he's 14/11, he might look kind of tight, but I would assume this sort of reggy looking guy to be actually pretty wide. Kind of. Well, after that again another player comes along, it's easy fold, but probably should have folded against the small blind as well. Main problem is that he either has decently good draw or hand that should be crossing my hand. Not the greatest of turn card. Doesn't. It's probably not folding. Barely anything he calls with to flop with. So I now have 4 tables running. Should be adding a couple more at least. And this bottom guy on the upper right seems like, well, this should be, well, it can be okay to call it. Against that sort of shove I have to be folding. Well, with the ace jack I think I have to, well, it's not the greatest of spots, but I think I call and fold if he shoves. It's 400. Well, he shouldn't be value betting anything weaker really. Of course, that's always hard to be sure against these guys. Planning to check call on the turn. And basically he shouldn't really... He's wrapping 6, but... Or backdoor flush. Oh well, nasty. Nasty one. The upper right, I kind of want to keep pot control in this spot because we are in bubble situation. Pretty coordinated board. And Otaku just flats. Kind of nasty. Nasty spot. My plan was obviously when these two players deeper stacks didn't look like guys who would be flatting that often, it was decent spot to be min raising and calling against PP and folding against other two. And in here I don't really see that much reason to be check shoving here. Just giving him bit more rope to be bluffing with. it's kind of tricky to keep controlled amount of tables in this site, because usually when I play, I just register big amount of games, and the table amount will fluctuate quite a bit, which is of course kind of bad as well, but here if I try to keep like 6 games or so running, it's kind of hard. And against player who has 36/0 stats, I would assume that he's really often going to be calling if I'm in race, but he's probably not going to attack against my limps, so I can pretty nicely limp when I'm on the small blind if I have somewhat playable hand. And pretty uncoordinated flops, so I prefer to c-bet and quite often take the pot down. (6-3). Well, that's pretty loose one. Queen 10 is solid enough that I can raise for value basically. And in here with my stack depth, definitely going to be check shoving. Nine, 7 off. It's close at least. Would probably be, well, might be a bit too loose to be calling. Could actually call here. I think I get wider action from PP against bot, where I think against Reki type of players we want to be usually shoving, as that will be looking a bit weaker. And most likely best option for me is to check and try to give him space to bluff if he has something, some busted draw. He has been passive and now he makes it huge overbet. Let's just believe that. Especially as he has been passive sort of player. And King 7, I'm definitely going to call against this guy. Not the best kind of flop. Well, some good run into here after that flop. Well, they are asking an interesting question. I think there might be some merit, but I also heard the downside. Downside of that, in here I have really great spot to be shoving against that middle stack. I heard that the nodes still stay on the same player, so even if the nick is changed, the nodes will stay. So if you have some certain type of nodes, you might quite easily remember that even though the nick is different from before. So I don't remember who said about that, but it's just the downside that if he and I don't really think my 6 have that much showdown here, but I should have decent amount of folding equity. I mean, I can quite easily have 9, but I don't see why he would be betting 9x really on the turn. Maybe some type of 9-10 that he's semi-bluffing basically, but I would think that if he has like 9-7 for example, he would be check calling it again on the turn. And this guy has been pretty 3-bet happy, so I want to be using decent amount of limp style. Well, again, when he makes this sort of absurd play, I kind of have to fold. Hard to think that why to make that sort of. With the ace deuce I can flat, I can shove. He has been pretty active on the heads up in min raising part, so it's going to be reasonable to just shove. Yeah, it's possible to change your nick. And it might be pretty effective in a way that if other regs don't know about you after you change your nick, you can get some extra edge probably against them if they think that you are possibly like recreational type of player. But of course they will quickly, if they are using like tracker, to notice that you are not some fizzy player. So some draws does complete, but I still have top 2. So I think I want to be value betting pocket 3 is pretty easy shoving spot. And queen jack going to be snap calling against queens. But is going to be aggressive enough that I'm basically going to be calling with Nash range at least. And mainly against regulars, my standard line is to call like 10 pp or below with the Nash. And if I think they are going to be shoving wider than Nash, then I will widen even further. Usually most regs will be aggressive enough to use Nash calling range in these games. Against recreational players it's different thing, of course. Are we just one tabling now? Okay. I did suggest to them on the Poker logo that they would add the feature that you would, when you are in the lobby here, there's no way to know that have I registered in the game. For example, this one. I have to right click here and see if it's register or unregister to know if I if I'm registered into tier. So in this one it's unregistered. Or of course you could open like lobby here and see it, but would help quite a bit if there was option to see if you are registered. No Twitch comments beside Pokermania advertising, and yeah, it's pretty nice. Basically, with the 7-6 board, I'm not sure if I want to be just checking and giving up or see betting smallish. Of course, there is like, for example, 8 or 10 that does improve my hand and are decent cards to double barrel, but of course against big 50 guy, I'm not usually really happily barreling multiple streets because they don't usually like that fold button. And this guy is min 3 betting. Basically, I shouldn't be folding. I think pretty close to anything that I open raise in first place. I think most reasonable hands to fold here are like some small offsuit aces, for example. If we had bet big, I could have folded, but against that sizing, I pretty much have to be calling. And again, really small. And he has aces. That's of course possibility when hit min 3 bets, but considering pot odds, I don't need to be ahead that often. And some random player can do such stupid stuff. Like he might have pocket tens and bet it for some reason. When he donk bets pot, I can't really do anything at all. Kind of call happy player on the button, so I think I just fold. Fold that one. Pocket nines I can't really call just for set mining, but it has some playability. Of course, this is not the best spot. He does see bet pretty small though, and we do have gutshot. got shot with our overpair, but this is not really that great of hand, and especially when they all call, I'm going to be folding most bets because it's always somewhat unlikely that players would be like semi-bluffing on four-way pot. So usually they would have something decent when betting turn, for example. But yeah, I was saying about the rate back that Poker Armenia is offering, that it's basically 50% because you can, at least currently, you can continuously. Here I want to be ISO shoving. Of course, this limper might sometimes have good hand, but I think most often he will have something that will fold. Not this time. This would be decent spot to semi bluff because this sort of flop will be hitting my range so strong, and I don't think King High will really have that much showdown value. Well, Ace does give gutshot, but problem is that he will have decent amount of AX. Flush draws probably don't fold, and I don't really expect King X to fold either. And somehow I win. Guy goes with 6-7 off. Great players. 9-man games especially are really soft in here, but main problem is that they don't really run that great. Ace 4 would be a decent spot to 3-bet if I would have some info against this guy, but when I don't really have that much and he didn't look that solid, it usually indicates that he's not going to be kind of interesting spot with ace 10. That do I want to be betting because it's probably quite hard to get value. I do block 10 high flush draw. If he has a high flush draw, he's obviously going to call with split hand and free rolling. And if I bet turn and he happens to be check raising, it's kind of awkward situation because there is the flush possibility already. And on the river I had second nut, so can't really be folding. Here we are on the bubble, and with the antes, I think shoving is reasonable. 4 tables now. And this guy is most likely not going to be folding that much. Of course, Jack 8 is in general not the hand you want to be raising that much against limps. It doesn't really work as value raise, and it still is decently playing hand. So now this is again kind of situation where I have hard time to think that he has me beat when he checks twice. So I will try to value bet small. I think he can still call with some weaker pairs and so on. And in here I'm going to be bluff catching. I think 7-6 shooter is going to be decent bluffing hand here. He limps so often that I will have decent amount of folding equity here. And of course, if he does call 6-7 suited, he's going to have a really great equity overall as well. So and good night for Danita. Ace 3, pretty obvious shove. 5-8, not going to play against this guy. Usually defends too wide for that sort of hand to be profitable. Looking great. When the ace hit on the flop. And king 4 is, with this stack depth, it's always going to be okay to shove. And I don't mind to take the pot down directly. And with the pocket threes against min raise I would be shoving, but when he 4x's I probably don't have any fold equity. And if I don't have fold equity with pocket threes with 14 pp, it's going to be pretty horrible. But yeah, I would probably start to play a bit more again, like on somewhere middle of next month. Going to visit Tallinn on few days, and then some summer capping stuff after that. Well, seems like decent looking player, so he's probably not going to be check folding huge amount on that flop. Well, not sure. Might have been folding queen high. It's just that if Villain is Reki type of player, he's usually not going to be check folding that sort of flop because it's so hard for me to really have much, because I basically never have ace, for example, or most of the time I don't have pocket pair. So by c betting he will really often get the pot down because I can't really represent that much, so there's not that much merit in floating or raising or whatever. Queen jack suited. Well, definitely I don't want to fold, and I do expect to have a decent amount of folding equity again when 35/14 player limps here. He has been raising decent amount of hands, so it's usually indication that when he limps in that sort of spot, it's more often mediocre strength hand, and not that often like premium hand. Ace 9 from this position. I think shoving is okay, but I don't really love the situation. And this sort of player is not going to be stealing that wide, so we don't usually want to be defending extremely wide. And with the ace 4, I'm going to be again calling, but if he has like king 10 type of hand, he's most likely not going to be betting the turn. Of course, now if he had bet the river, it would be a decent spot, or pretty standard spot to call, in a way that if he has some AX, it's mostly going to be split pot. So we are mostly afraid of queen X, and mostly it would mean like something like queen jack, queen 10 that would try to semi bluff the flop. Or of course he might have some sort of slow played monster hand. This is probably spot where I have to fold this hand, because the guy haven't been 3 betting in 200 hands. So, but it's just that when he 3 bets to 200, I get like 100 to call for a pot of almost 500, so can't really fold with such spots or pot odds. King's 8 suited, one player seems to be sitting out and several small stacks. Of course, when I open this, I have to call against the 1500 stacks, but the good side is that I often get decent amount of credit for that open race. So what do you guys think about this sort of layout compared to more stacked style? 6-8 off, really active player overall, great bot odds. When he checks the flop, I really often have best hand. Well, I think in bubble situation it's best to be checking on the bottom left. And turn improves in a way our hand, but it's just a bluff catcher in situation where there is big ICM and button limper can quite easily have 10x, lot of 10x hands in his range. So I think I have to fold that turn spot. Heads up. Well, I'm just shoving here. In a way, bad side of shoving this is that usually I don't get called by weaker hand. But at same time it's decently solid hand. I most likely have good amount of fold equity against this player. 7-5 suited. I don't think it's good to call with, because we are such shallow stacked. Nasty situation again, because I can pitch some total air, but that's pretty much it. Because the flop is totally dry. And not great flop. He hasn't been aggressive, but I only have 6 PP. So I can't really give up King 6. But yeah, that 8, 9, 10 against small blind calling range should be pretty much one of the worst flops there is. So happily just checking down, and sometimes winning with a high. should start some super turbos. I could also check behind that A7, but from the small sample I have, this player is more likely calling preflop with lot of stuff, and if that's the case, then I can quite nicely just value bet. Just value bet. And hitting queen. Well, if he again bets 45/18, I need to be ahead like 1 out of 6 times. That sort of stupid stuff is not that rare. Basically blocker bet in the river, but he's really tough to get caught by anything weaker, so doesn't really make that much sense. So I will probably continue to register like maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes for these super turbos, and then stop registering and play the games running to the end. This guy is really active. I could try to 3-bet, or just, well, flatting is not bad either. And I think I call once here. Basically, when he checks flop bets turn, he's just, I would say he's just representing 10. Or of course he might have like, that river would have actually been pretty decent for him to double barrel in my opinion, because heart flush draws are something he can represent decently. Betting pot. Well, 8 is really horrible card, but I don't think really there's much merit in turning this hand into bluff. I do still have beat some air hands, but if he had like basically any sort of semi-bluffing almost hand on the turn, it did improve on the river, so would have been pretty easy snap fold if he had bet again. Again, will end min 3 betting out of position. And the main point is basically that you don't necessarily need to try anything too fancy post flop. I could just try to flat here, but 30 chips, well. And now he pots pretty weird looking line. Pretty weird looking line, well. There was decent amount of busted draw he could have. And this is pretty, especially against recreational type of players. In this sort of stack situation, he's going to be folding. He might even be folding always, more like 90% of time. Against good reg, it would often be more tricky situation in a way that good player usually understands that he's offering his chips on the silver plate, so he might have some traps and some of weaker stuff. Well, didn't really expect that one. But when he dunk bets that huge, I don't really think he would fold that often. If he had bet bit smaller, I could have even raised. It's just that if I don't expect fold equity or very little of it, I can't really profitably continue. And in here, I definitely don't want to be raising, basically, because I don't really mind at all if I can team play with this PP guy, and when he seems wrecky, he's most likely not going to be bluffing with air into empty side pot. And it's often when you have medium type of stack that you want to be offering more of those team play possibilities for your opponents. When he pots it, I'm just going to be folding. Seems to be using bit bigger sizings all the time on this right table. Basically, I would say that if you are like something like less than 30 pp deep, there's not really that much reason to be I could see bet here. If there's any diamond, I can pretty decently shove turn. Again 50 chips. Of course, I only hit like 4 outer, something like 10% of time. Or of course, I can have sometimes king for example can be out as well, but it's pretty close that I already get what odds against just hitting that 4 outer. Well, 5-3 would have been a bit, probably quite close. That could it be had been shoving hand in an unopened pot. Doesn't seems like type of villain who would be folding that often, so don't really want to open race with king deuce. So these are all super turbos. Well, I could actually unregister games if they don't start quite before, and just play these. One of the nasty things end of session here is that when you need to guarantee that you don't have more games registered anymore. Nailing that flop. And I don't really need to see bet that much to shove the turn. And when I see bet smaller, it usually gives villain a bit more room to do something he shouldn't be doing. So especially if villain looks, that was quite a setup. So if villain looks aggressive, you more often want to have sizings that give them opportunity to be raising more and so on. And if villain looks more like passive calling machine type, it's more often better to just bet big. So if they have some sort of, for example, drawing hand or some sort of made hand, they often call too much. And again, king 9, this sort of stack depth pretty much have to be shoving. And he actually 2.5x raised and folded, which is pretty bad. And 10-6 would actually be pretty close in Nash. It's actually a bit outside even Nash range. I think I had some marked hands. And 5-10 suited is also decent hand. Decent hand to be shoving. So I did have ace 9 Yeah, it was this hijack shoving spot. Should be pretty marginal one. Okay. Let's close the clients and analyze that one quickly. So yeah, in FJS1 ranges it's basically break even. And these calling ranges, well, I think these are quite reasonable. They are not uber tight, but I doubt they would be much tighter usually either. So, but yeah, we can see here that any suited ace is pretty standard looking shove. At least if we don't assume pretty much wider ranges, but ace 10 would be like first solid offsuit ace. And as always, if you look this type of hand, it's also, in my opinion, nice to check that what would be decent shoving hands as a range, and we can see that we can go quite wide with suited stuff. So, for example, 10-9 suited would be pretty nice one to shove here. Of course, we have some space to min raise also. So especially if we think that wheel lanes behind us are mostly shoving or folding, then min raise folding, for example, some of these weaker or mediocre offsuit aces would be pretty nice as blocker value. But yeah, thanks for people following coaching and commenting. Good evening in tables if you are still playing, and if not, good night. Bye.